Unbelievable. We're back
We're back.
with another episode. And I just want to say this is episode 9. Soon we're going to have 10 episodes under our belt.
We have a ton of listeners.
That's insane. But it's just, to go from concept to reality. And I remember you and I talking and just obsessing over episode 1 and kind of, freaking out about how we're going to do this and what it's going to be like. And we just sort of jumped off. We've been trying to learn and improve as we go. And we have a lot of that left to do. I think we'll always have some of that to do. But wow, it's so cool to be at episode 9 and to know that, okay, 10 is coming. We're going to be in double digits.
Yeah.
It's
good to be back in the studio. It's good to be back in your store.
Yeah, I love that.
We did several episodes remotely and
we did. I think we're going to end up being able to do a couple.
Yeah.
So that's great together.
Yes.
All right. Well, today's show is going to be a lot of fun.
It is.
And I want to say welcome back to everybody at home and thank you for listening and watching. Left, Right, and Local. It's the only show where we take a national headline and we slice it open and we find Elloree hiding inside like a prize in a Cracker Jack box.
That's right. And tonight's prize, it is delicious. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a man who once tried to escape a plagiarism scandal by changing the font.
Oh, yes.
Has now issued an order to every U.S. embassy on planet Earth to stop using Calibri.
Calibri.
Right, Calibri. Can't even pronounce
the font.
Here, this one's easy. And return to Times New Roman.
That's right. That is a true directive that went out to, it was a diplomatic directive to all the diplomatic stations that are representative of the United States. And that's right. It's us reaching a moment in American decline where foreign policy is basically a formatting update.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like walking into the ER with a bullet wound and the doctor says, okay, but have you considered
Helvetica?
that
Because another font. Rubio's out there governing by serif, policy by nostalgia. He's trying to defend the dignity of the republic with typeface.
Right. And I just have a question.
Okay.
What font do you think Elloree officials should use to write their apology letters or their resignation letters? Maybe.
First of all, I think it's the idea of them writing an apology letter to anybody. I don't see it.
No, they're not wrong.
Happening. No. But I don't know, maybe resignation letters. I could see that happening.
Oh, that would be a beautiful thing.
It really would be.
Yeah.
Or maybe just a letter like writing home from prison.
Oh, maybe.
What font might you use?
What they had for lunch that day.
Well, they better use Times New Roman or, they'll risk not getting that pardon from the Trump administration. But honestly,
serious.
I think this tracks. It tracks. In 2016, Rubio wanted fonts changed just to catch you up. This is true. 2016, Rubio wanted USA Today to change their font. Actually, his folks who were working with him on his campaign wanted the USA Today to change a font that they used so that his plagiarism would not be recognized in the writing of his own speeches.
Right.
In other words, he just simply did not want his speech script to look like the article in USA Today that it was taken from.
Right.
And now he wants font changed so that the world will recognize the dignity of the State Department.
Can I just say what a waste of time? What an absolute...
It is. All kidding aside, it is a fucking waste of time.
Yeah, I think we have bigger fish to fry than worrying about what font people are using.
I think so.
It just makes no sense to me.
Still running from the margins. Well, here's the thing, Krista. Rubio can change his fonts all day long, but here in Elloree, perception isn't shaped by typography. It's shaped by geography, by the ground, right? By the past, by the invisible lines that we pretend aren't there.
They're there, and they've always been there. They've always been there.
Yeah, and you don't need diplomatic cable to find them. It's just right across the
railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Segregation is real.
Absolutely. We could say it plainly. Elloree is still segregated.
Yeah.
And it's not by law, it's by design, it's by habit, by the gravitational pull of history that no one wants to talk about at the Piggly Wiggly, even though we don't have a Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
There's the white side of town and there's the black side of town.
That's right.
Here. Between them, we really do have the railroad tracks. It kind of works like an unspoken border in a way.
It does. And the old police chief, let's remember that in those allegations that were made by David Martin, he created those boundary lines. He created those borders
For himself.
Yes.
In terms of his policing policy, that's the allegation. And we're talking, of course, about none other than Murph, the Smurf, Sean Murphy. David Martin, our former police chief, his lawsuit alleges that Sean refused to police the black side of town. How do you decide that a part of the community is not worth serving? You're a policeman. Is it just pure racism?
Well, let's talk about the Narcan comment.
Well, there you go. That's in the same vein.
Yep.
I mean, this is just out and out racism.
It is. It is. And we have to remember too that on his social media pages, many of them, he made reference to the Dixie Mafia. You and I have talked about that before. There is nothing more racist than the Dixie Mafia. I mean, come on.
Well, then you have his very good friend.
Yes, our Maryland.
Keller.
She actually has a Confederate flag flying under his carport. I see it every single time I drive down Woodland Terrace. It's right there. You can see it. You know, I get it. Confederate flag in the South, a lot of people do view it as heritage. But when you are in a public office, you have to remember that it is an insult to many of your constituents.
Well, many, how about almost half?
Right, right.
And, just to be, I think it's fair saying that we do have one black-owned business in the
I was going to bring that up.
Right.
And that's just been in what, the last 2 years? She's
absolutely, I think she runs one of the more successful, well-run businesses in this community. It's beautifully done, and it provides, it's an event space.
And she's done an excellent job. She has an excellent reputation.
Yeah, and we have now replacing David Martin, who replaced Sean Murphy as our police chief. You have Earl Kinley, who is a black man, and of those police chiefs, the best.
Yes, he is so community oriented and he knows how to bring people together. In fact, he and I and Joyce Johnson, our new clerk of court and assistant town clerk, we are planning a big event for January the 10th at Joe Miller Park. It's going to be a first responders appreciation day. We have our legislators come in. We've got David Pasco come in. We've got the solicitor's office that's going to set up. We're going to have free food, burgers and dogs, jump castle. It's going to be a fun day. I'm working with Lifelight now to see if we can get a bird out there.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
So you guys remember January 10th, 11 to 2 is going to be our first responders appreciation day. And we just want to make this a fun event for the children.
That sounds like a good day. That's something I'm definitely going to check out.
Yeah.
And so you would agree with me that you don't erase a century of fire with one new flame. This whole idea of lines that we pretend we don't see. Sometimes I think the only reason that those lines stay invisible is because I'm so used to tripping over them.
We have to get past this one side of the track or the other. And let's talk about pretending not seeing lines.
Yeah.
Pretending not to see them.
Yeah, okay.
Let's talk about South Carolina. So we're going to kind of dive into the DEI and where it is under attack, where it isn't under attack. We're going to talk about
it's being evacuated like a burning building.
It is. And we have to remember that DEI has 3 little words in it. And when we look at the definition of those words, Tim, DEI on the right side of things has become this ugly thing that many Republicans are just completely against and all of it. But when you break that down, to the three little words, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's look at it from the definitions of those three words. And then being a Christian conservative, I believe that those three words are very important. So diversity, the official definition, the state of being diverse, variety. And you and I have talked about this. This country was built on variety.
Of course.
You think about the people who came to South Carolina back in the 1600s, and my ancestors were some of those. They came from Jamestown into Orangeburg County back in the late 1600s.
Before it was Orangeburg County.
Right. We had
a country.
And they came from England into Jamestown, settled Jamestown, and then dispersed from there. And my ancestors came to Orangeburg County. What was then not Orangeburg County, but this is the area that we came to. And then we dispersed from there, Dorchester County, Hampton County.
Immigrants.
Yes, immigrants. Imagine that. So that's diversity.
And from the American Indian perspective, minorities at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Equity, the quality of being fair and just. And when you look at those two words, fair and just, you look at what we're facing in Elloree right now and the level of corruption. That is not fair and just behavior. So that's equity, the quality of being fair and just. Inclusion, the act or state of being included, of including or being included. I don't think that any of us, when you look at the humanity side of things, I don't think any of us want to be accused of not including someone in our events, in our lives, in our government, in our schools, and anything across the board. We are a society of inclusion. And we have to remember that. The division that we have right now is because we're not including everyone.
Well, I mean, all men are created equal, right?
Why not?
It's way
That's what it says.
to founding documents. And that's not, pie in the sky hopefulness. It's a doctrine.
That's right.
And for good reason. Inarguably, our founding fathers were closer to their own immigrant status than we are today. Of course, we don't see ourselves as immigrants, but truth is we're born immigrants.
Yes, we are.
All of us, mostly.
Yeah.
And I think that is something important to keep in mind. But I just want to talk a little bit about, you're talking about the definition of those words. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that a person could really, with respect, argue it. I think the rights argument is that in our efforts to include, in our efforts to become more diverse, what we've done is, their argument is, this is not my argument, this is the rights argument.
Right.
That what we've done is we've actually managed to exclude in some ways the rights of whites. The rights of whites. Now that's a fucking dangerous title for me to repeat because I don't believe in it. I'm a firm believer that the reason policies, or let's even call them DEI policies, must exist is because in our history, even recent history, we've demonstrated that we haven't gotten all the way to equal rights. We have to remember that it wasn't long ago that even women didn't have equal rights of any color.
That's right.
And we have to remember that blacks in this country have not had equal rights. Blacks were not having the same educational or healthcare or employment opportunities or even judicial opportunity. And I'm talking about being able to walk down the street and not get arrested based on your skin color or questioned based on your skin color. We're doing it today with ICE in Home Depot parking lots, walking up to you because you're brown.
Why don't we have ICE in the communities where the illegals are truly committing crimes?
I think an ICE policy that is based on, we are going to, using intelligence, and I'm not talking about academic intelligence, I'm talking about actual
intel.
Thank you. Using intel, we're going to find those illegals who are committing crimes, who are part of gangs, who are,
drug trafficking, human trafficking.
Our policy is to find them, to arrest them, to get them out. That is sound policy to me. When it begins to jump the shark into arresting Rosa because she's in the country legally while she's contributing to society, you have a problem.
I agree with you on that. I am not a proponent of anyone coming to the country illegally. If you want to come here, come legally. But I believe that our resources need to be focused where the criminal behavior is, not Rosa dumping the mop water.
There are jobs that only immigrants do. That is a big part of our economy, the growers and the farmers. And that is a massive illegal immigrant community that services those businesses, keeps them running. And I think a policy that destroys that is a misguided policy. I now taking it, just sticking it on to DEI, and I want to talk about it on a state,
Yes, yes.
This is granted. I know this is going to sound a little lefty, but it's supposed to coming from me. So you'll nitpick me where I need to be. But from my perspective, what you have happening in the state is basically a dismantling of DEI departments at the universities or burying them under student success.
Right.
State agencies rewriting hiring rules to eliminate cultural competency. Teacher training, softening or restricting lessons about systemic racism. So that
I have some notes that I
whitewashing, no pun intended, the history books and grant applications that just are quietly dropping equity language like it's contraband.
So when I look at many of those points, Tim, I look at it from merit based. Our hiring and admissions at our universities should be based on your merit, grades. And listen, there are so many underprivileged students out there that normally would not have the opportunity to go to college. It's unfair if those underprivileged students have worked their fannies off all through school, gotten excellent grades, and they're turned down because they can't afford it. That's a problem. I believe that merit-based admissions and hiring needs to be where it's at. Not based on color, not based on socioeconomical status, not based on any of that. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what house you live in. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. If you have done the work, you get the job. If you've done the work, you get admitted. If you've done the work and you want to go to college, then we should have special funding out there to pay for those children who cannot pay for it.
I like that idea. Would you agree with me when I say that when you look at, let's just say, the early end of the 20th century, so I'm talking about just coming out of the mid 20th century in the 70s, right? I would be old enough and cognizant enough in, my getting into double digits age and in my early teens to remember the inequity of the time where DEI would served a purpose, which is to force institutions, whether they were private or public, whether they were institutions of learning or just businesses, corporations, to proactively set out to create opportunity for people of color to be considered and hired. Would you agree with me that we've had to do that for women and we've had to do it for people of color because otherwise we would still be living in a time of inequity? And in many ways, we still are, I argue, and I'm not alone in that consideration. But would you agree with me that there's a time and a place for DEI?
I do. And like I said, from the right view, DEI is ugly. And I don't think that we need to make it ugly. From the right's point of view, I don't believe that it needs to be ugly. Again, I think it needs to be merit-based. And, I can tell you that in my 40 years of working, I've been in a lot of management positions and we've run our own company. And when I interviewed someone, whether it was, in corporate management or retail management or bringing somebody into work for above grade, I would compare resume to resume, experience to experience, qualifications to qualifications, and I couldn't give two hoots about the color of their skin.
Yes, but you are you, and that is different. And the problem is that there were and are many, 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 many people who don't think that way.
You're exactly right.
And in those cases had to be forced to open a fair hiring practice. And
We do it in the housing market. We have to have it in the real estate industry.
this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We cannot pretend that our histories, from white history in this country to Black or the experiences of people of color, are not distinctly
real.
different. You know, you and I have had all of the privilege and opportunity that comes with being white. I have had even additional privilege for a certain amount of time, being that I'm male. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I was born male, white in the United States, in LA of all places. I would call that a leg up in every category. Some of you would think that California is the Antichrist, but
I don't look at that as privileged at all.
it was extremely privileged and bubble.
Yeah.
And had every single opportunity a person could have, unfairly so. Of course, I wasn't aware of the inequity of it until later, but I don't have guilt about it. I don't walk around with guilt. I don't think that another person of any color should be walking around with guilt over it unless they played a significant and firsthand role in the undermining of another human being based upon the color of their skin.
Right.
So I guess what I'm driving at is that in a world where Black people, as an example, or let's say people of color, because it's not just
our
Black folks, it's right,
people of color.
Exactly, where they were discriminated against and have been discriminated against and are discriminated against in many places in many ways to this very day, are still fighting for equality, needed to have those precious policies in place where they were in order to break the barriers. And so a lot of things come from this.
Do you think we've gotten away from, over the years, over the administrations, do you think that we've gotten away from the true meaning of diversity, equality, and inclusion, the DEI ideology? Do you think we've kind of gotten away from that and we've gone to one extreme or the other?
Yeah, I think we have. And I think that as soon as it becomes political fodder, it risks losing its true meaning.
Yes.
And its true direction.
Yes.
And so, as an example, the left would hijack it and use it as political campaigning device. That's not necessarily a good thing at all. I think also there's another question in there that's adjacent, which is, have we kept up with the progress of those policies themselves to see how they could be adjusted to prevent what the right is screaming about, which is now it's jumped over into, and this is not me, so don't shoot the messenger. I'm just, the right policy now, or some of the right has in mind that these DEI policies have gone too far and now it's inequality focused.
So now we just got to squash it instead of amending it, instead of revising it, instead of taking the higher road and saying, how can we come up with a solution to this problem? They're just saying squash it, and that's the solution.
Yeah, I think when you start burning it down in all different aspects and vilifying it, here's the problem. You vilify DEI, you're vilifying it all the way back to the origin. That's a problem.
Right.
It serves a purpose, and that didn't come about in a vacuum. It came about out of, I would argue, necessity. Come on. You would be blind and you would be lying unless you really genuinely were a person who had their head in the sand for years and years and years, to not admit that as a country, we have had, in many ways, a bitch of a time enacting policies born out of the Civil Rights Act.
So the Civil Rights Act was amazing, but I don't believe that we followed it and kept up with the times like we needed to. And maybe that's where that DEI came from.
Of course, I think, it's been a struggle and a fight for people of color and for women in this country for decades.
And if you're a woman of color, holy moly.
There you go. In other words, the origins of it, to me, remain very clear and competent. And the policy, therefore, to me, can make sense and has in many ways proven to be successful. the idea that you want to squash it as a policy now because we've reached a certain point where it's overreaching, it's a nuclear bomb where surgery is required.
Right. And you go in and you review it and you make changes to it because it is important to be diverse, equal, and inclusive.
Across the board, it's for everybody.
So I have a brief story to tell about this. Our oldest daughter was, I believe, in she was in fifth grade. South Carolina State University. Ashlyn is an artist. Shelby's an artist too. But at this time, our oldest child was an artist, and they had a sponsored art consortium at South Carolina State University for elementary school children that were going into middle school. And that's where Ashlyn was. So Dan's aunt was one of the instructors at this art consortium. And she told me, Dan's aunt said to me, look, you need to go ahead and submit some of Ashlyn's artwork and see if she'll get accepted. Well, Ashlyn was one of maybe 3 or 4 white children in that program. And I have to think about it because South Carolina University or South Carolina State is a predominantly Black university. And I have to think, did they let her in because she was a white girl? But does it really matter? Does it really matter that she was let in maybe because she was white? It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. She was let in and she learned some amazing things in that program.
And from your perspective, she was qualified. So
right.
Let's talk a little bit about the message.
Okay.
And the message to me is we want the outcome of equality without discussing the inequality that caused the problem. Does that resonate with you or is that an unfair assertion?
No, I can agree with that. So the outcome is equality.
Well,
that's the outcome that we all want is equality. But you're right. Inequality did cause the problem.
I think so.
Yes, it did. No, I agree. And,
this is then about ending ideology, colorblind hiring, and what we would consider the new fairness.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I look at it as fairness. We have to be fair across the board. White, Black, doesn't matter.
So do you
Male,
think that,
female?
do you think that this policy of fairness could be pursued in a more culturally surgical way that doesn't give the impression that solving the problem comes with blowing up the policy in sum total?
Blowing it up as in
destroying it from
I do not believe we need to destroy it. And sorry, all you righties, but that's just where I'm at. You know that I am a big proponent of humanity. And I think it's important that there are policies in place. But I believe that those policies need to be examined periodically.
I agree with that.
Updated.
I agree with that.
And changed.
Yeah, I agree.
If needed.
I agree with that totally. I think part of the reason this has become such a polarizing discussion, not yours and mine in particular, but I mean, in general, in the ether, it is because the way the Trump administration has addressed this is,
get rid of it.
Hey, your pinky may need to be amputated, so we're gonna go ahead and take you from the waist up.
Right. So there is a level of extremism, I think, when it comes to sorry, righties. I'm sorry, y'all, but that's just the way I feel about it. We have to have a level. And I think a lot of it comes from the area where we live. I mean, we see it every single day. I have seen Black want to be business owners come to Cleveland Street and been denied a business license because it didn't fit the town's narrative. Now, might have been a bar, might have been a liquor store, but we don't want it on Cleveland Street. You can do it off Cleveland Street, but not on Cleveland Street. DeAndre, I believe is her name, with Posh, which is our event venue. She is the first Black-owned business that has lasted more than a year on Cleveland Street in the time that I've been coming to Elloree, which has been 30 years.
That I really love to see
More.
greater. Yeah, I would like to see greater diversity here. We would all benefit from it.
Yes.
It's funny. I had some talking points here in my notes that are lefty talking points about how this dismantling of DEI harms us. So I have these 4 points. One was fewer supports for students of color, less trust between agencies and communities. But the one that I'm not plowing behind any of these except this one that really fucking gets me. And it's the sanitized history. I have a problem with this history scrubbing BS that's going on. The idea that, hey, let's turn off the smoke alarm so that we don't have to hear it.
I am a firm believer that you don't squash any of our history. The good, bad, the ugly, it all needs to be taught. I believe that we learn from history. And
is there any, as a writing, do you have any justification for this idea of going in and scrubbing certain texts in museums or what have you?
I don't believe any of it needs to go away, period. I'm a history buff, Tim. I love history. I love South Carolina history. And there are some ugly points in South Carolina history. But I love South Carolina history, and it all needs to be taught.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. All right. Well, this is where we're going to take a break. We are going to head out to commercial land, and we will be back right after this. Stick with us.
Looking for something timeless? At Archaic, we bring history back to life with antique and vintage furnishings, plus made-to-order farmhouse furniture built to last for generations. Step away from mass-produced. Step into Archaic. Find us at archaicmodern.com.
Press Me, where your style is hot off the press. From bold statement tees to one-of-a-kind designs, Press Me lets you create, customize, and wear what speaks to you. Choose from our designs, bring your own, or let our team create something totally custom, made just for you. Our email address is pressmeboutique@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Facebook. Press Me, your local t-shirt shop.
Well, we're back. Hey, y'all, we're back. So I have a question.
Yes.
When did the word diversity become politically radioactive? When did that happen?
Well, now you're taking us to the national stage where radioactive is the brand.
Ah,
I mean, if South Carolina is rewriting the syllabus, Washington is editing the entire library.
there's a good unpack there.
Do you want me to tell you what the Trump administration is doing and not quietly?
Tell me about that left. Tell me what that leftist view is. And,
Yeah, well, scrubbing DEI language from federal agencies. We talked a little bit about it.
Yep.
You agree with that one or no?
I believe they are scrubbing it.
Okay, and is that right?
I think it needs to be rewritten, not scrubbed.
So how would you rewrite it?
I don't know. I'd have to dig into that. I would have
But-
to
but-
really.
But in a broad sense, you think that there's some language that could be updated.
Yes, I believe that there is a benefit to some of our DEI policies and procedures. There is a benefit to it. Again, I think it's become extreme on both sides.
So the extreme part on where it's gone too far in your mind, pulling it back, where you're scrubbing some of that language, rewriting it a bit where federal agencies are concerned.
But not squash it.
Right. Because I'll tell you, I from my perspective, I think in order for you to understand where DEI has gone too far, you would have to do almost a forensic examination of where it has worked. The only way you can find out if DEI has gone too far in a particular category or not is to understand how it has worked so that you know where it hasn't and what to change if there's something.
So, and I think that, we come back to that whole rule of problems versus solutions. So let's see where DEI is not a problem. Let's look at where it was a good thing.
The Trump administration is not so great at, they're sort of ham-fisted in this regard. This is demolition without boundaries.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think in some policies, demolition without boundaries is a good thing. But when it comes to our people of color, or women versus men, when it comes to the rights of all citizens.
And we should also mention those who are considered, I think I'm not allowed to use the word handicapped anymore, right? What am I supposed to say?
Maybe disabled.
Disabled, right?
Yes.
Disabled. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we got to think about it, Tim. Our children who are autistic in our schools.
I have an autistic one myself.
There you go. And
I call them artistic, but all right.
that's right. I have a good friend that she lives here in Orangeburg County. I have two actually that have autistic children, and they are not given the same opportunities, even in our Orangeburg County public schools. And you and I have talked about that. I received an anonymous letter from a group of parents with children at East Lake, and we are going to dive into that. I'm doing some research.
That's another show, and I'm looking forward to that. Of course, I land close to that, having an autistic child myself.
And that's where our DEI policies and procedures can really help. They can help our children.
All right, let's move on to halting or defunding DEI in offices across institutions. Are you going to go? I mean, is that again, are we in a destruction?
I think it needs to be reviewed.
Or surgery?
I think it's surgery.
Me too.
I think it's surgery.
We risk agreeing with each other. Rewriting museum labels to remove references to colonialism, enslavement, and oppression.
You do not rewrite our history. That is a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
Don't rewrite our history.
Restricting federal contractors from discussing bias and privilege.
Well,
I mean, come on.
We see it here. We see the bias and the privilege here, right here in small town Elloree. So if it's happening in small town Elloree, it's happening on the federal level, and you don't award a contract based on who you know. You award a contract in the public space. You award a contract based on costs to the American people, qualifications, and that's it. Merit and cost. That's the rule.
But you understand what I'm referring to here is the federal government restricting those who work for them, for lack of a better term, from discussing bias or privilege.
You don't discuss it. I don't. Why would that need to be discussed?
Well, I would imagine we could find plenty of contexts within which bias or privilege could be a reasonable discussion in one manner or another. I just think the idea of telling federal contractors what to say is telling them what to think. There are limits to how much of a person's influence over their own approach to their work, especially when it's communal work. Let's move on to editing curriculum guidelines nationally.
I don't believe that nationally. I believe that that our states should handle anything that has to do with our schools. I believe that needs to be at the state level. We know what our children need to learn.
Do you think it was time for an edit of any of that?
I do.
You do?
I believe.
History.
No, not history. Not history. What I believe is that our school system should be handled by the state, at the state level. I do not feel like our federal government needs to have their hand in our state school systems.
Interesting. And what about reducing the role of race in grants and hiring and program evaluation?
I mean, I don't think race should play a part.
In an ideal world, wouldn't need to. But this is not an ideal world.
It's not. It's not.
So I call it an erasure campaign. You like it? That word?
It is erasure, and it needs to be.
Whenever I hear the word erasure, I think of a great band from the 80s, Erasure. Probably not great for you, because you were listening to country.
No.
What?
No, I was listening to The Cure and
So you were listening to Erasure for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Okay. That's why you and I don't really fight from the left or right, or music and taste are too closely aligned.
The Cure was my favorite. And I listened to some reggae. Bob Marley was one of my favorites.
Bob Marley's theme.
Yeah. So no, I was not a country music.
Oh man.
Country music as a teenager.
I remember going to Jamaica. I wasn't a big pot smoker, but I went to Jamaica once and I smoked an enormous amount of marijuana from me, which doesn't need to be a lot because like I said, I wasn't a hot smoker. I wasn't, really, I wasn't a professional by any means. And over there, they're all professional.
Everywhere.
Anyway, this local dude got me high as a kite and played some deep cut Bob Marley music that I'd never heard before. It's just that was an epiphany.
I listened to Metallica when I got a little bit older.
Really, yeah, Metallica is a great band. No, it's not my kind of music. You can't deny how musically talented those guys are.
That was my very first concert that I ever went to. Dan took me. I was pregnant with Ashlyn, just barely pregnant.
So you were high.
I was not high, not then. So I smoked pot before Dan and I got married. Those were my pot days. I don't think Dan and I ever smoked pot together. But anyway,
unfortunately, my father is passed, but fortunately, my father is not here anymore to hear me admit to smoking pot because he would not, even after all this time, he would not be happy.
I was appalled because, I am this little Southern belle. I mean, I was born and bred here. And when the chick in front of us, lifted up her shirt with no bra on and showed her boobs right there at the Metallica concert at North Charleston Coliseum, I thought I would die. I thought I would die because that was not prim and proper. And I just knew my grandmother was going to walk in any time and beat my butt because the other girl showed her boobs.
Now, I think when we get into DEI, we need to be diverse and equitable and inclusive of women without their tops on.
No.
I think it's very important.
No.
Well,
no.
I'm just saying we should not exclude anyone. All right. From breasts to our final segment.
Yeah.
And I just want to make the point that I think that many are trying to ghostwrite our history, and I'm really totally against that. And I know you've intimated that you are too, and she'd love to hear that.
I think it's very interesting because that I have some very conservative views. Very conservative.
I know that.
And
we haven't taken the gloves off and gone toe to toe really on abortion or
right.
anything. I know those days are coming.
They are.
The audience is probably like, when are these two people going to fight?
Right.
But that's not the way we approach it.
I am non-negotiable pro-life, 100%. But when it comes to equal rights for all citizens, that's one thing that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And if we have to have DEI verbiage in our laws, then we have to.
Well,
but
we had to have DEI verbiage in our founding documents.
We did.
That's
all men are created equal.
It is a foundational component of the imagined pursuit of happiness.
Right.
The reason that that's there is because it was unavailable in tyranny.
Everybody has the right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, period. And if we as a society are not allowing the diversity and the equality and the inclusion, then we have to have policies in place that almost force our hand.
You are making my case for me beautifully. And what I'm going to do is just leave.
Good night, y'all.
All right. So let's just leave them with this because it matters more than fonts and more than party lines and more than any one election. America was never one color.
No.
And it was never one story. By that fraction,
still writing itself.
Is and it was never one people.
Right.
We're born from the Europeans. My father used to say, if you go into the men's room and you stand at the urinal, you're a peon. And that's something different entirely, I recognize.
My granny used to say, a pecan is what you eat, a pecan is what you eat.
Speaking of peons, the first Europeans who landed here certainly weren't native, wouldn't have been mistaken for native. They were newcomers. They were foreigners. They were outsiders in a land that was already full of, and it was It was a land that was full of nations and languages and skin tones and different beliefs. In other words, there were immigrants, as you said. The country grew out of this collision, which is what it was: tragic, violent, miraculous, infuriating. And it was built by every shade of humanity. So you have indigenous people, enslaved Africans, immigrants from every corner of the globe, refugees, farmers, dock workers, and dreamers.
Yes.
And survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And the courageous, willing to cross an ocean on planks.
And you had people working for the railroad, but then you had this store merchant that was self-employed. We are still there. It's just on a grander scheme.
That is right.
Grander scale.
That's it. So that brings me to this line that diversity didn't arrive in America. Diversity is what made America possible.
Yes, yes.
You always have to remember that when you erase the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the, and I'm talking about the definitions that you, Krista, talked about at the opening of the show.
Right.
So let's take the policy of DEI, policies, for a moment out of it. I'm talking about when we erase the meaning, the purpose, then what we're doing is scrubbing race from history. But this is the most important part. We're pretending that equality happened without a struggle, and it didn't.
It didn't.
It hasn't.
And it's that struggle is still here today. As we sit here in your shop, both of us small business owners, both of us working our fingers to the bones, that struggle is still real.
Yeah, it is. And the idea is that you pretend that equality happened without a struggle, and then you're not protecting the nation.
Right.
But you're amputating parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that built the nation. So Rubio can change the font. South Carolina can change the rules. Washington can change the labels. But the bones of the country, the people who shaped the country to this day, they are written in an alphabet that you're not going to be able to erase, a font you're not going to be able to change.
And let's think about this. Why shouldn't an African American, a woman of color, I don't even care what color she is, a woman of color from across that line have just as much opportunity as you and I have as small business owners? Why should we rewrite that and make her stay across those lines?
Well, that's the whole point of questioning the policy, in particular, this larger policy of what I would call attacking DEI in a manner that is not interested in finding and in identifying and preserving the effective parts of it all. A policy like that can only exist within a framework that supposes that it's a worthless policy from start to finish, and in a framework that forgets from whence we came. That's my position on it. I know that you, and I don't want to speak for you, but I know that my position of rejecting the policy as a whole in some ways shares something with what I'm accusing that policy of being, which is nuclear.
Yeah.
My resistance to it also is nuclear, and yours perhaps a bit more surgical than mine.
Yeah, I'm one of those that wants to pick things apart and keep the good parts, maybe change the bad parts or get rid of the bad parts completely. But any policy that is written, whether it's written yesterday or, 30 years ago, any policy has to be reviewed periodically because we are changing. This world is changing. Society is changing. We have children that are special needs that are coming up in our schools, and they're our future. Our children are our future. And if we are not constantly changing to meet the needs of our future generations, then what are we doing? We're going to be lost. When we're old and decrepit and sitting holding our grandbabies in the rocking chair and our children are running this country, if we don't start now to change the policies and the procedures and update them and keep them up to date, then we're going to be lost in 30 years.
Oh, I think we're going to leave it right there. It's been Pleasure as always, Krista.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This podcast has been a blessing, and I'm truly grateful to you for participating. Every time I sit with you and have these discussions, I not only have a lot of fun, but I end up learning something, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, I'm grateful too. And if there's one thing that our listeners take away, it's truly that you can be on two separate ends of the spectrum. But when you sit down and you rationally talk about things, there is a level of agreement, and there's a level of oh, what's the word I'm looking for, Tim? I mean, you and I agree on a lot of points. There are some things that we'll get into that we don't agree on, and we adamantly are definitely on two separate ends of the spectrum. But when you sit down and you have conversations, real conversations with real people about real issues, you'll find that there are many things you agree on.
Yeah, and I think that it can be difficult to disagree on humanity,
Mhm.
the tenets of our rights, and not only our human rights, but the right and wrong of it all. Sometimes those things are difficult to disagree on,
Right.
regardless of which side of the political arena you stand on, right? And so you and I have a tendency to kind of gravitate toward the things on which we agree. We do spend some time understanding from two separate perspectives what makes sense. And I like that. I like that about us in our approach to this. And it has made, of course, the discourse between us much more civilized than you often find on programs where they try to pit people against each other. You and I are not pitted
Mm-mm,
against one another.
we're not.
And I imagine that as we go forward, we will come to these discussions where we are firmly ensconced on two very separate sides. This happens to be one where we have a bit of overlap.
We do.
It makes it interesting. And I also would say that, look, a lot of the topics that we've been discussing relate to our experiences amidst corruption in our small town. You and I, of course, have had similar experiences, but we've also been there for each other through both of our families' experiences. And we know what has gone on here. We're not on opposite sides of that.
Right.
So a
Right.
lot of this show has been and will be you and I on the same side of things.
Well, and you think about the word inclusion that we've been talking about tonight. You and I have faced exclusion in the town of Elloree.
Oh, absolutely.
So-
Because it's not just a black white thing here. It is very much a local or Yankee, as they call me, or interloper or outsider, or pick your word. There's that going on here too. There's exclusion in more ways than one.
That's right.
Well, this has been Left, Right, and Local, episode 9. Thanks for being with us. We'll catch you next time.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.